Welcome back everybody, and let's continue with our port scanner. So we managed to create a function that will convert the domain name into an IP address, and now we want to be able to specify multiple targets for our program to scan. Okay, so how we can do that? Well, it is rather easy. We're going to implement a little bit of changes down here at the bottom of our program. So here you will notice that we have the variable called IP address. Now it says enter target to scan. Well, we can simply just do something like this and specify to the user of this program that they can also enter multiple targets by typing target/s. And also we're going to specify to the user split multiple targets with comma. Okay, so simple as that. Let us make this a little bit better. But this is just the part where we prompt the user how they can specify multiple targets. Now we need to actually split these targets and scan each one of them one by one. So how can we do that? Well, first thing we're going to do is, so we don't get confused, we are going to rename this into targets variable. And then what we're going to do, we're going to delete this line for now. And we're going to specify if and then comma in targets. If there is comma in targets, logically that means that the user of this program specified multiple targets to scan. If there is not comma inside of the targets variable, that means that the user only specified one target to scan. So we're going to lead by that logic. So if comma is in targets, then for IP address, and we're going to call it simply just IP_add in targets, and we're going to call the function called split. And what this function does is basically it will split the string with the character that we specify inside of the brackets. So we want to split at every comma. If we split at every comma, that means we're going to split all of the IP addresses one by one. Therefore, we're specifying right here for IP address in targets.split, we want to scan each and every IP address. So scan port IP address, and then so we want to scan each and every target from this list, and in order to do that we're going to create a function which is going to be called scan. Now I know we do have a scan port function, but we're going to use this function in order to scan one single port one by one. And we're going to call this scan function in order to scan each and every target and also convert the domain name into an IP address if needed. So all that this function will take as a parameter will be the IP address, which we get from this for loop right here. Okay? We also want to strip it from any unnecessary empty spaces in case there are some. And right now all we need to do is code this function. Let's go all the way up and call the scan function onto the target. So this will be one single target. And first we need to do is to get back the line that we deleted before, which is the conversion of the IP address. So converted underscore IP will be equal to check IP, which is our function that we coded in the previous lecture. And we need to check the IP address from the target, which is our parameter inside of the function. Okay, and now we will print, just so we know what we're doing. We're going to print, first of all, new line character, which is \n plus, and let's make some type of a smiley right here, which will look something like this. So, and let's print scanning target. We also want to specify which target are we scanning in case there are multiple ones. So we'll specify the string of the target, which will be either the domain name or the IP address. If we specify plus the string of the converted IP, it will only specify the IP address since it will already be converted from the domain name. But we don't want that. We want to specify plus the string of target, which will be the names that the user specified to the program. And then we need to copy this part from below, which is for port in range, scan each and every port, Let's copy this. We no longer need it right here. We can delete it from here. And we can move it inside of our scan function. So right here. Let me just tab this properly, and we're going to change a few things if we need. So for port in range 75 to 85, we can change that right away, for example, from port 1 to port 100, and you can keep this number as low or as high as you want. Just for the purposes of this tutorial, we're going to leave it on only scanning 100 ports. Since most of the ports that we want to see whether they're open or closed will be in the first 100 ports, okay? And then we will call the scan port function onto the port number and also onto the converted IP, which we converted in the first line of our function. Okay, so everything makes sense. Now, another thing that we need to change down here, since we specified if comma in targets, that means that the actual user specified multiple targets to scan, but what if they specify only one target? Well then, nothing of this will get executed, and we will not really scan any target throughout our program. It will simply just exit the program without scanning the target. So we need to add an else statement right here. So if comma in targets, else, we want to scan the targets. Simple as that, because in this case, the targets will be just one IP address or one domain name. Then it will jump from that function to the scan function, which will convert that IP address, and it will perform the scan port function onto the first 100 ports. Okay, so everything makes sense. Now let's see whether we have an error inside of our program or if everything works perfectly. Okay, so let's see how we can run it. Let's open up our terminal and navigate. And first I will enlarge this so we can see everything. And we need to navigate to our PyCharm directory. It will usually be in the /root directory. So here it is, PyCharm projects. I will cd to that directory, type ls. We have the test directory, which we created once we installed the PyCharm, and we have our port scanner directory, or our port scanner project. So let's change the directory to the port scanner, type ls once again, and here is our port scanner.py. I will clear the screen and I will run the program. First of all, let's try it with one target. So let's switch it up a little bit. I will use my actual router IP address in order to perform the test of this program. So I will type 192.168.1.1. Press here enter, and you will see it will perform the scan really fast because my router is close to me. Therefore, we can see most of the ports are closed. We have the port 22 open, port 23 open. Let's see which ones are also open. Port 53 open for the DNS and port 80 open. All the other ports are closed, okay? So, right away, we can notice that this is not really that good to look at. We don't really want to print the closed ports as there is too much happening right here, especially if you scan more than 100 ports, it will be really hard to find all of the open ones. So let's see what we can do inside of our program in order to print only the open ports. Okay, so right here, whoops, need to go right here inside our code. And in the scan port function is our print statements for the port open and port closed. So what we can do is instead of printing port is closed, we can delete this. And we can simply specify pass. Now what this will do is it will not perform anything, it will not print any statements, it will simply just pass in case the port is closed. Okay, simple as that. Let's test it once again. Python 3 port scanner.py, specify the IP address of my router once again, and this is a lot better. We can see scanning target and then the actual IP address of my router and then which ports are open. And it is the exact same 4 ports that we saw before. Let's try another target. Let's specify actually 2 targets now. If I run the program, and for this test, you can specify the same target as I will, which will be an actual domain name, which is called testphp.vulnweb.com. Okay, so let's specify this target, and also you can specify any other random IP address or domain name if you want. In this case I will specify once again my router. So we have a mixture of the domain name and the IP address, so we can see whether this will work properly. If I press enter, it will first start off with this domain name right here, and it will scan for the open ports, and then it will proceed to the IP address of my router and scan the open ports for that router as well. So we can see on the first link it found 4 ports open, port 21, 22, 53 and 80, and on my router the same 4 ports as before. So our program works correctly. We're almost close to finishing our program, but there is one more thing that we actually want to do. We want to also print which service is running on an open port. For example, let's say we want to discover whether port 80 is running Apache 2 or some other version of a web server. Well, we can do that by simply grabbing the banner on an open port. And more about that in the next lecture. For now on, we are glad that we can scan multiple targets, whether they are specified as a domain name or as an IP address. We can split them by comma. We can also scan one target if we want, and we also print only open ports as we are not really interested in the closed ports. Okay, so thank you for watching this lecture and I will see you in the next one. Bye.